On August 21st, we disseminated Mikey Sutton's Geekosity scoop that according to his sources, Kathleen Kennedy is due to be renewed as president of Lucasfilm. While this scoop is not yet confirmed to be accurate, or if it is, for how long that extension may last, to say fans weren't impressed was something of an understatement. Naturally, we reached out to writer and producer Kamran Pasha, who has previously broken down the various Disney civil wars for us, as they were, and still are, being fought in the trades. Here is what he had to say about the most recent rumors from Mikey Sutton.
Well, I don't know Mr. Sutton, and so I don't know his sources. I will say this. I do agree that his claim that Miss Kennedy has been renewed for all of these reasons is suspect to this listener because it doesn't jive with the politics that we've seen developing very publicly in the last 7 or 8 months. But it does jive with something else. It jives with the Reddit release that came out a few weeks ago, which feels like many years ago.
I was thinking that too, and that's something that we also broke and we exposed as a fake planted leak.
And the people that put it out there and the people that promoted it believed it to be true, right? Which was that Reddit leak was all about this alleged internal insider claiming that, giving some critiques of Ms. Kennedy are fair, but in reality, she has a great relationship with Jon Favreau. She's not responsible for the choices that were made in the sequel trilogy and blah, blah, blah. And it really elevated her. And that, while I agree with Tom that she's a little bit of a helicopter parent, I think she is ultimately responsible for the choices in the sequel trilogy of Star Wars. Even if it's just through negligence. And it was made to try to take all that blame away from her. And I knew that
to be clear, I meant more recently, but yeah, sorry.
Yes. Yeah. So, I think that was a fraudulent effort for PR at a time when she was beginning to feel beleaguered as Mr. Chapek was suddenly, to her surprise, asserting himself in ways she did not expect. That's when it came out. It was a bit of a whimper in the middle of a storm because it came out in between these articles. They're referencing the Forbes article that came out earlier this year, which we covered very directly and which perhaps I had prophesized was coming. But that article which said that, Bob Chapek was in trouble there and he needed, and because of how things were being mismanaged at Lucasfilm or Star Wars and all of that. And that I had said was actually likely to have been engineered by Mr. Chapek himself to make it look like, oh my God, he's in a bad situation. He's got to assert his power, to give him the excuse to assert his power, right? And then I've said on this channel that we saw the culmination. There was 3 stops. There was the Forbes article that says Bob Chapek is in trouble, right? The second article that came out was a few months later, which is from the Hollywood Reporter, if I recall correctly, which stated that Bob Chapek is knocking heads and reasserting himself and taking power away from studio heads, which is a direct response to, oh my God, he's in trouble. So how is he going to get his ship stabilized? He's going to start taking control. That was in 2. And then this surprise article in The Atlantic, which is not really known for its entertainment content, suddenly comes out and states that, Jon Favreau is the visionary that's going to fix Star Wars and names Kathleen Kennedy, while not directly blaming her, essentially connects her with the failed version of Star Wars. That's being said in this very culturally, it's like the New Yorker. The Atlantic is for the cultural elites, especially the coastal elites, right, of what they're supposed to believe. And so to prep them for where the culture shifts are going to come. And so all of that strongly suggested that this civil war had been fought and won quite rapidly, actually, right? And Bob Chapek had done this winning move. And I think in the middle of this, we saw that Reddit leak, which for me sounded like a desperate effort to try to bolster Miss Kennedy's face publicly as she started realizing, I'm actually not going to win this. I think my time's up, right? So now we have this Mr. Sutton claiming this. So there's a couple of possibilities. One is that it is just he's being fed bad information in the same way of Reddit, which is attempting to, from people in Miss Kennedy's camp, which is attempting to just let her keep face, which is very important to her dignity. She's been under a lot of public attack and humiliation. She just doesn't want to be attacked inside the system and humiliated within the system, and her legacy humiliated. So that's one. But let's say it's true. Let's say
let's assume that it's true. Under what circumstances can this actually be accurate? Which, of course, we're going to learn within a matter of weeks anyway.
Yeah, and so it would be accurate. And I know Tom has some thoughts on and some things he's heard about what could be in her contract. But let's set that aside for now, right? Let's just say that none of that is there, and it's just pure politics, which is what I seem to be at least good at observing, even if I'm not always the good at master of playing it, right? And so my observation is that let's say that there is no restriction on Bob Chapek letting her go at this point, right? Let's say there is no restriction or contractually. If that's the case, then the reason then would be if he essentially renewed her, it would be done quietly. And why would it be done, right? In the same way that she was apparently renewed 3 years ago, we didn't hear about it, but she put out her own press release. Disney didn't say anything, right? And so I'm not even sure a press release would even come out now saying that she'd been renewed. I think she would just continue on to that role until she would announce her retirement, which it would be whenever she felt like it. But what would be the reason for that? In the current situation where the Civil War is no longer about Disney versus Lucasfilm, it's now about a much bigger problem, which is Disney versus Marvel, because Disney versus Lucasfilm was a lot of sort of a passive-aggressive backstabbing behind the scenes, such as letting Ms. Gina Carano go, and embarrassing Jon Favreau, embarrassing Bob Chapek, right? That's that kind of passive-aggressive war. What Feige is doing right now is a very aggressive war. It's active aggressive war, and in a very shocking way to the system. And so that's the real problem. And so if you've got this war going on, let's say you are in a historical moment in the Middle Ages, where you are attempting to become King Arthur, where you've got all these nobles who are essentially running the kingdom, and you're attempting to centralize control and not be a figurehead king, which is what everyone has had before. So now you've just defeated one noble that was causing you problems, and now the other nobles wake up and realize, oh, you're not going to be a figurehead. You might come from my fiefdom, and then they start a war upon you. You cannot fight multiple wars at the same time. What you need to do is you need to pacify as many fronts as you can while you take on your biggest adversary who's coming for your throne. So from a political point of view, the smart thing to do for Bob Chapek would be to not have Kathleen Kennedy leave and be resentful and join forces with Kevin Feige. And she's proven to be a master of doing things behind the scenes, right? Not as much as he is apparently, but she's definitely does those kinds of things. And so he doesn't need her bolstering the Hollywood crowd further against him. So the best way is to give her a chairwoman emeritus role where she gets a very large paycheck to continue doing what she's doing, which is stay at home and work from Zoom and have nice conference calls and get awards and not actually have any influence on things. And then he's basically paid her off to be silent. It's an old imperial technique. In Islam, the Umayyad Khalifa, the Caliph Muawiyah was famous for that. He always said, I never want to use my sword. I'd rather use my purse first, right? So you pay off your enemy first so you don't have to fight them. It's a waste of time to pull out your sword. He said, I will use my sword, but I'd rather just buy them out first. So that's what this is, essentially a buyout, so she doesn't get involved in this bigger war that's a real problem for him. That is what it would be if there's no contractual issues, and Tom can share what he's heard could be a contractual issue, which I don't know if it's true or not. But politically, it would be savvy of him to get her off the board and not be a troublemaker right now.
Yeah.
Basically, what I heard was just that in her this is what I was told. Again, this is just a rumor, so take it with a grain of salt. Was that in her contract, only counting the Star Wars sequels, mind you, not the spin-offs or whatever, the movies had to hit $1 billion, and then she had like a first refusal right on her contract for renewal or whatever. Because as long as she hit that goal, it was like similarly to where like if a movie hits a certain goal, you get the payout bonus, like what's going on with Black Widow right now. Same kind of thing, I guess. So it was almost like a kind of it triggered the automatic renewal thing since Rise of Skywalker made the $1 billion, and so did the first two films, making $1 billion. And then on top of that, of course, she took all the credit for Mandalorian, and that Baby Yoda saved her job as well. Was kind of also implied. But again, that was basically all I got out of that.
See, I'm wondering with Chapek, like, because we have those stories with regards to him saying like no more multi-year contracts. Would it be possible, I wonder, if he did renew Kathleen Kennedy, but for a 1-year thing, basically just to close out Indiana Jones, and also kind of flex the muscle saying, yeah, she may have been here for all these years, but I'm giving her only that 1 year, and that's how it's going to be. And if we don't like the next year, it's basically kind of delaying an inevitable, especially considering the fact that the Scarlett Johansson court stuff is going to be rounding out for the fall. Would it not be in his best interest to be like, yeah, I'm going to prove that the most powerful woman in Hollywood is still subject to my rule of a single-year contract or a shorter-term contract, just to kind of send a signal to everyone else within Disney that, you know, these legacy contracts are no longer going to be a thing. That would be an interesting play. I wonder if he would do that.
Well, and
It's
you
a
got to
smart
also
thing.
remember that Bob Iger inserted himself when it came to Star Wars too, before he was even gone. Remember that big article where he came out and said, I take responsibility and the buck stops with me on Star Wars.
Yeah,
So I think
that's the moment when she was a figurehead, essentially.
Well,
that's what I think. But yeah, Cameron,
Yeah.
go ahead. You were going to say something. I'm sorry.
Well, I like what Script suggested because it also fits into what that Hollywood Reporter article, which was, you know, step 2 of this of Bob taking control, right? You know, of Chapek taking control, which is he asserted in that, or the sources asserted that he was attempting to end the studio head's long-term contracts, which is how Ms. Kennedy got in the situation that they couldn't get rid of her and they couldn't course correct, right? A bad situation that they started seeing was derailing, right? And so it would be great to be able to take, you know, it's essentially a form of the walk of shame. She gets renewed, but under the circumstances that he has asserted, where I'm the boss and you're under this tight leash here, and you know, you have to prove to me that there's any reason I should keep you on beyond this year, which is exactly what Kevin Feige is terrified of. He's terrified of coming to that situation, and he's willing to burn down his house and Disney to make sure he doesn't come into that situation.
We may not get a confirmation on whether or not Kathleen Kennedy has been renewed for some time, but if that turns out to be the case, which it very well could, then what you have just heard are the most plausible reasons why. We will naturally keep you up to date as the story develops. Till then, for more studio politics and Hollywood stories, head on over to Patreon to follow and support Kamran Pasha there. Link is in the description. As for Kathleen Kennedy and her possible extension, what do you make of it all? Let us know in the comments.